Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at cloud infrastructure. Specifically, we're going to be learning about it using Linode. We're going to learn about system images, how to set up a Linux virtual machine, specifically Ubuntu 20.04. We're also going to take a look at some of the things that we want to do to our virtual machine to secure it, as well as getting files on there. And in the bigger picture, how is our website going to actually be reached from the web and whatnot. For this tutorial, you're going to need a Windows terminal, specifically with a Linux distribution installed in it, because that's what I'm going to be using, and I recommend that you use it as well. We're going to be learning about cloud using Linode cloud provider, so link for that in the description. You can grab a $20 credit if you want to follow these instructions using any other cloud provider. Feel free to do that. So first thing that we want to do is we want to go to our cloud provider console, and for Linode, we're going to be in Linodes, and specifically, we want to go ahead, click on create and Linode. So we're going to set up a new Linode, and here we're going to select from the menu Ubuntu 20. In the region, select your own region. It doesn't really matter that much. I'm going to select London. I'm going to grab the Linode, the cheapest, right? We're all about the bargain, and we're gonna say just tricking dash library test, right? Because we're testing this. Root password doesn't really matter that much. Just set it up, and whatever you can remember for a brief period of time, because I'm gonna show you how to disable it. Now go ahead, click create, and after that we are going to connect to the virtual machine and take a look at it. So once your virtual machine has been set up, this is approximately what it's going to look like. You're going to see an IP address over here, and the rest of the stuff, not much of it matters. We are not going to be looking at the metrics, volumes, nothing like that at the moment. All I want you to do is just grab the IP address, and what we want to do is connect to the machine. All right. For this, you're going to need a tool called SSH. If you're just using Windows and you don't have a Linux distribution, I highly recommend you get it. Your other option is PuTTY, and that option sucks, okay? So you want to go ahead, SSH onto the machine. You're going to use the root user because that's the only user that's currently available on there. You're going to supply the IP address, and that is going to, are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes, we're sure. Go ahead, supply the password that you've inputted during creation of the machine. And now we're here. So let's go ahead and clear it. And here we're root on localhost. First thing that you want to do when you connect to the machine as a root, you want to disable root, okay? So you're going to need two things. First, you're going to need to create your own SSH key. So for this, we're going to go ahead and open up this Ubuntu test distribution that I've showed you how to set up, how you can get a clean distribution every single time. On here, let's go ahead and cd into the home directory by pressing, by saying cd tilde. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And in here specifically, what we want to do is we want to invoke a command ssh-keygen. This is going to basically generate a key that we can use to sign in. So if you specify a custom file name, just make sure that you're going to put it in .ssh idrsa, and I've just noticed I'm doing it as root. So when installing this machine, I've specified a user for myself, so I'm actually going to switch to that user, okay? And I'm going to again switch to the home directory. And again, let's just get the keygen command up here. Right, so this is where this is the default file that's going to be generated in your /home/user/.ssh/idrsa. This is going to be your key. Just go ahead, press enter. If you specify a custom file, we're going to take a look at it, what that's going to look like later. Go ahead, press enter, enter a passphrase, and just like that, okay? So we're going to take a look at passwords as well, so just pay attention to what password you've put in here, okay? Let's go ahead, clear the console here, and now if you type in ls, you shouldn't see anything in your home directory, like right? So if you just type in pwd, you should be in your /home/user directory. If you type la, that should give you all your hidden directories. If that doesn't happen, just do ls-a, and you should be able to see the .ssh directory. What you want to do is, let's go ahead and list the .ssh directory, and here you're going to have two keys. The ID RSA is your private key. You do not want to expose this. Keep this as secret as possible. Do not mess with this one. The ID RSA is like, kind of secret. So what we want to do is we want to get the contents of the ID RSA key .pub, and let's go ahead, grab these, and we're going to copy them. Now, coming back to the previous terminal where we've been a user, and just a note, if you are inactive for a long period of time in the terminal, with Linode, what it's going to do is it's going to disconnect you. Okay, and then it's going to freeze for a bit. A bit of an unpleasant experience, but just be warned. Okay, so sometimes if it's freezing, you're just being timed out and you're being disconnected. Okay, so first thing that we want to do is we want to create a user which is going to use this key to connect to us. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a user. I'm going to say Toshik, right? We're going to supply some kind of password, and just take note of the password that you're supplying here. Okay, and for the other options, again, we don't need them. Take note of the password because we're going to do a little bit of experiment with securing later on as well. Once we have added a user, what you want to do is you want to add them to the sudo user group, which is basically you're going to give the user administrator privileges. Okay, specifically the command for giving administrator user privileges is user mod-ag sudo. So we added the user to group of sudo and we say Toshik, right? And or whatever username you provide, right? So whatever username you want, really. At this point, this user should be a moderator, and same as on your Linux on your local Linux distribution, what's going to happen is if you're going to not cd, but okay, we will see. Let's cd back into the home directory so we get the full effect. If we list the home directory, we're going to see that the Toshik user is now in here. We go there and there's going to be almost nothing there. We still have some hidden directories, but that's pretty much it. What we want to do now is we want to add the .ssh folder in here. So let's go ahead and cd into this user's directory. We're going to make a directory, so mkdir, as I like to say, and let's just make .ssh, right? So now if we list, again, it's going to be the same effect as if we can't see it, and if we list all, that's the .ssh folder. Let's cd into there, and what we want to do now is we want to create a file where we're going to put this key. Okay, so we're going to touch authorized keys, right? And if we now list the files in the SSH directory, we should have this directory, right? Let's go ahead and use VI to go into authorized keys. And again, press I for insert, Control V to paste, not that username. Go back and copy the key again, right? Paste it in here, press escape to exit insert mode, write and quit, and exit, right? Verify that the contents are indeed there, and there you have it. At this point, you should be able to connect to the machine with your other users. So let's go ahead, switch the tab here, and this user, what we should be able to do now is we should be able to SSH as our user. Again, I'll grab the IP address here and I'll paste it here, and here we go. So again, accept connection, and we'll input the password. Now, the thing that we want to disable is if we exit it and we try to connect again, let's say we enter the password incorrectly a couple of times, you can see it will prompt us for a password, right? And if you try to remember how we signed in with the root account, we also typed in a password. Now, if we type in our password of the user with which we registered on the actual machine, we don't want to be able to do that. So the password of the user that is registered on the machine, that should be inaccessible because that is prone to brute force. Okay, so somebody can brute force into your machine by just quickly retrying many different types of passwords. So we want to disable that. And that's really the first thing that you should be aiming to do with your Linux box. So first thing, disable the root user. Second thing, disable the logging in with password, really. So let's come back here. Let's exit as root. And what we're going to do is we are now going to configure this machine to not be accessible with password login, because this user is now an administrator as well. Remember, we've added him to the group. So to disable this, we need to change a configuration file. So the configuration file lives in etc ssh, and it will be ssh dconfig. Okay. We will need, if you notice, if you try to just cat the file, I think you will be able to, but if you try to vi and you will, let's say you'll try to edit the file, where's my cursor, something like this, and then you'll try to right quit, it will tell you you're in read-only mode. So to exit the file, you press :quit and bang. So you're basically just discarding the changes that you've just made. Go ahead and add sudo in front of it. So you will then be able to edit the file if you're in basically administrator mode. Every time you add sudo, you enter administrator mode. Here we'll have an option, permit root login. Do not uncomment it. What you want to do is you want to say no here, okay? The other option that you want to find is there will be a password authentication option. Go ahead and comment that and say no here as well, okay? Exit that, right quit, and now what we want to do is we want to restart SSH. So let's go ahead, use sudo systemctl restart sshd. Okay, that should restart it. And now to verify that this is indeed working, go back to your machine and try the root login, and you should get permission denied. Okay, coming back to here again, same thing. We can exit to disconnect from the machine. We can try to connect to it, input the password incorrect amount of times, and then it's not going to permit us to log in with the password. Okay, so password login is disabled. Now the only way to log into your machine is you need the private key and the password to that private key. So it's like triple secured, right? Or whatever amount of metric secured. Now that our machine is secured, we can go ahead and play around with it. Okay, I'm gonna leave links for this in the description. We're gonna go ahead and install .NET Core onto our box, and where are the instructions? Right here. Start an application and serve it through using Nginx. Okay, so go ahead, copy the commands that are here. Go ahead, just paste them in, right? So we get some kind of package. We go ahead and unpackage it, right? Put in your password for sudo. If you say ls, you see there's the package. We've already unpackaged it, so we can just go ahead and remove it with the rm command. And remember that this was a brand new machine, so what we want to do is we want to do sudo apt update, right? So just whatever it's doing back there, you know, magic, you will never know. Just make sure that you run that. Okay, so that has ran, and now we want to go ahead and just install. The only bit that I'm going to install is this .NET SDK. I'm going to opt in for 3.1 because I haven't used .NET 5 really yet, so we are not experimenting today. Let's go ahead, say sudo apt install .NET-SDK, and we'll say -3.1. Okay, we will need to say Y to the flag, right? And that is going to install .NET. Before installing this, you can try running the .NET command. It's not going to work. Okay, so once this has finished, go ahead and verify that .NET has been installed. So .NET, .NET-help, .NET-v, whatever you want to use to test it. Right, let's go ahead and clear this. We are currently in our home directory, so anytime you want to find out your directory, type in pwd. And in our directory, what we're going to do is we're going to run .NET new. We'll just type -h to get all the possible templates. It looks a little bit messed up, but we'll just say .NET new web for the empty template right there, and -n to give it a name. In our case, we'll just say test. Okay, that should start up the application, and once that has finished, we can again go ls. There is our directory. We can go into test, we ls, and all familiar things, right? So if we cat startup, you already know what's going on here. You can even have a quick play around with it. Go into Vim and try to edit C# code without any IntelliSense or help whatsoever. Let's go ahead, quit this, and if you can guess, we can actually start the application as well. So it's just like having the thing on your computer, really, but now it's in the cloud. All right. Let's go ahead, close this, and what we're going to do is we're going to pause right here. We're going to create an image. We're going to recreate our virtual machine for learning purposes, right? So let's go ahead, disconnect. We're going to go back to our Linode right here. What we're going to do, we're going to go into images. You can stop your Linode here, your virtual machine. You can not do it if you want. Preferably, you do want to stop it. I love to live on the edge, so we're going to what's it called? Just go ahead, select the Linode that we want to turn into an image. Select its disk, and the label. Let's just go ahead and say tricking a library test image. We're gonna go ahead and create it, and the creation for that is scheduled. So here you can see the images being created, and now we're just gonna go ahead and give it a couple of minutes to create. So once that has been created, let's go ahead back to our Linode here. We can go ahead and delete it. So we're gonna go into settings, delete Linode, delete, and press delete. So that should initiate deletion of your Linode. Now we want to go ahead and create another one, right? This time what we're going to do is we're going to go to the images section, and we're going to choose an image. And here we're going to choose our tricking library test image, and hopefully you can understand what is about to happen. Again, select the region, select the box type, and here we're going to say library okay. So this is the for recreated. We're going to put in a password for root, not that it matters. We can put whatever we want. Root is disabled on this image. And let's go ahead and create it, right? So we're going to wait a little bit for that to be created. Once that's done, we're going to continue this tutorial. So once that has been created, let's go ahead, grab the IP address. We'll say SSH root, right? We don't know the password anyway. Accept the whatever, and permission denied, right? So it is the virtual machine that we've built up before. It's a snapshot of it. It's like as if you're writing code. You're like, right, I'm at a good place, commit, and if I mess anything up, it's something I can go back to, okay? Or I can replicate this amongst many virtual machines. You know, the world's your oyster. So when people talk about horizontal and vertical scaling is basically making the VM bigger, so giving it more CPUs, more RAM, more memory, whatever. Horizontal scaling is putting on more virtual machines, so from one virtual machine to 2, 3, 4, 5, and etc. Okay, now let's go ahead and connect to it again using our other user. Right, coming back here. So we're on the VM, let's clear the console, and we'll put .NET, and here it is, right? If we list our directory, our test application is here. So a big point about images, they help with deployment processes as well, backup purposes, and scaling purposes, okay? So just take note of those. If you're ever in a situation where you need to solve that kind of problem, and you don't have an experienced member on your team, you're the man. You already know. You try to solve your problem using images in terms of CI/CD, etc. Okay. Now on this virtual machine, what we want to do is we want to try to connect to our application, right? What do we need to actually reach our test application, right, and see the hello world in the browser? Let's go ahead and say sudo apt install. We're gonna install Nginx, and this is a web server, right? So Nginx request comes in, and then it goes ahead and outputs whatever you tell it to output. So if we're quick, let's go ahead, copy the IP address. We're gonna try to go to it, and we didn't quite make it, but hopefully if Nginx has installed successfully, you should see this screen when you reach your IP address, right? So I don't know how it's pronounced, by the way, Nginx, pick whatever you want. Now that we're here, let's go ahead and put some configuration in the Nginx file, and I'm going to show you basically how to do it, right? So again, another link that will be in the description is instructions on how to host your application. There's going to be a configure Nginx section. Here we're just going to grab this, and again, I'm just grabbing this from documentation. When we actually go to deploy it, it's going to look a little bit different, okay? This is just so you understand what is going on, more or less. In the etc folder, if you remember from the previous, if you watched the previous episode, the configuration for PostgreSQL also lived in the etc folder. The configuration for SSH also lives in the etc folder. You can kind of build up a pattern of where stuff is in which folders as well, and where you can think of looking for things, okay? So in here, we want to go into Nginx. Here we're going to have a couple of things. Primarily, the things to notice is the nginx.conf file. That is like the centralized config for your Nginx. Do not touch it, okay? What you want to do anytime you add a website and you want to enable a website, you want to do the following, right? So you're going to go into sites available, right? So let's go ahead, cd into here. And what you want to do for each one of your websites, you want to add a separate config, okay? So you will need to do sudo touch test. So we're going to be adding a configuration for our test website. So if we list again, there is our file. We can then sudo v into our test file, insert, paste the configuration, escape to exit insert, and go to the line where we have the server name and press D twice to delete the line. Okay, we delete, cool, press escape for good measure and write and quit. Okay, so again, you can just sudo cat test to make sure that you actually have written to it. Now what we want to do is we want to cd into sites enabled, and in here you're also going to have a default. You will notice that the color is a little bit different, and the reason for that is that because this is a symbolic link, okay? And I can't explain too much about symbolic links. All I think about it is as like an object reference, right? If you just have an object, you put it into one variable and you put it in the same in another variable, both of those variables point to the same thing. So here, when you're going to create a symbolic link, all I can say is that it's just going to point to that file to which you are symbolically linking it with. So the way that you do this is sudo ln-s. The first part is where are we pointing it to? So we're going to point it to sites available, and then we're going to select the test file, and then test as in this folder, there's going to be a test file that is going to be linked to, right? So let's run this command. We're going to say ls, and there is our symbolically linked file. So that's called test. And if we cat test, I mean, it's still the same configuration, although the file is actually in another direction. So if we need to, we remove this file and the other file's untouched. So this is basically how we enable, disable things, okay? Without like actually removing actual files, okay? So let's go ahead, clear this up. We're still in the sites enabled folder. Let's go ahead and cd into our home directory. So cd tilde, or I don't know, the wave thing, okay? I'll clear this again. And the thing that we want to do is we want to run a test if our Nginx configuration is valid. For this, you run nginx-t, and if you get an error, don't be scared first time. Make sure you put sudo in front of it, okay? And then you'll have this. So next thing, you want to restart the Nginx server, so reload the config, so -s reload. Let's go ahead and do that, and that's it, right? So the configuration is reloaded here. Let's go ahead and start our application, right? So in here, let's cd into test and do .NET run, and let's see if we can hit our application. And kind of, we're not going to be able to, but we're going to see what it sort of takes to get there, right? So if we refresh this any amount of time, we're still at the same page, and that's because there is no real mapping from this IP address to our actual application. If you pay attention to the documentation here, how it says server name and it's pointing to, it's asking for specific URLs to be matched in order to get there. This is something that's not happening here currently. Okay, so let's go ahead, come out of here, and what we're gonna do is we're again gonna go into etc nginx. We're gonna go into sites available. We're gonna go into test. So we can't actually cd into there, so let's just sudo v. We're gonna edit it from here. In here, let's go ahead and enter a new line, so server_name, and let's go ahead and put our IP address. We don't need the HTTP or anything like that. we will put the semicolon on the end, escape to exit insert mode, colon, right quit. Okay. Again, nothing's gonna change because you need to you always test the configuration first and then go ahead and reload it once it's successful. Okay, so once we've done that, let's go ahead and run our application again. Once that has started, we are going to go ahead and refresh our website and we should see the hello world that's coming from our application. Okay, so now there are a couple of things that we can do in the episodes to come. I'm going to show you how we are going to use the domains here. If you've seen the 2 episodes ago, or 2 or 3 episodes ago, we've been talking about setting up SendGrid on the admin panel and how it's pointing to my Linode server. Again, we're going to revisit that and we're going to point our domain to the Linode server here, and we're going to point our domain in this dashboard. So in the domain section, we're going to point it to our virtual machine within the Linode infrastructure, okay? And then we will be able to input our domain, and that's just going to take us to our application, and all is going to be good. And one thing, if you notice, if we can quickly go into the test file, one test file, we say the IP address and we say /, and that's gonna, we can say point to our Nginx application. If we say /, if it begins with /API, point to our .NET application. So on the same domain and the same subdomain, really, we can have 2 applications, 3 applications, 4 applications, as many applications as you want can be disguised as living under one domain, right? So you're just composing one applications out of many other applications, right? And you're just saying, where do we want to route these requests to? All right. So let's go ahead, exit this. Now that we have sort of an idea of how that works, let's go ahead and do something else. We're going to learn a little bit about our sync and how to transfer files. And this is going to be useful when we're going to be building our CI/CD pipeline, when we're going to be deploying our code to this directory, right? So let's go ahead and create a user. So same way that we did before, add a user, and we're just going to call it CI/CD for continuous integration delivery, or you can call it test or something like that. And make sure you start with sudo. Password, again, we can just tell something like password here. Correct information, yes. And now what we want to do, we want to go through the same motions. So let's go ahead, open our Ubuntu test. Here what we're going to do is we're going to create a separate key. So SSH Key gen. Let's actually cd into our SU. It's weird, it starts with root, but yeah. So we are in our home directory, SSH Key gen. We want to generate a key. So we can go ahead and put it in that directory, or we can put it in home directory. So let's go ahead and just say we want CI/CD. Okay. Password, you want to keep this empty, and that's it. Okay. So this is a little bit less secure, but we're not giving this user admin privileges, and we're gonna only give it privileges to a specific folder to write the files to there. Okay. So this user is not gonna be able to screw up our VM. However, you still need the key to connect with to our you still need the key to connect to our virtual machine with it, so it's still quite secure. So if you do ls, again, CI/CD, that's your private key. CI/CD pub, that's your public key. A little bit less important, but nevertheless, do not expose neither of them. Really, do not like email or post it in blog post, whatnot, unless you're going to delete them straight after, which is what I'm going to do. So go ahead, copy that key. In here, what we're going to do is now, if we look in the home directory, the same as we did when we checked for our Toshik user, you can see here we have the CI/CD test user, and we want to do really the same thing. If we check, we don't have the SSH folder. Let's go ahead and sudo mkdir. Really some funny... Somebody was having fun here. I can feel it. Authorized keys. Once you've done this a couple of times, you can then script these and set these up automatically as well, but we're not going to go over that. Sudo v, insert, paste this. Okay, let's go ahead and just cat it so we make sure it's there. Cool. So now that we got that, let's go ahead and actually I'll make this a little bit bigger. What we can do now is we can SSH, and to specify the specific key, what we're going to do is we're going to say -i, the key name, and then we're going to CI/CD_test at whatever IP we had. So if we go here, and there we go, permission denied, right? So even more secured. Let's go ahead and try the Toshkon there. Definitely not. Maybe I'm forgetting something. Actually, just seeing I've misspelled the user. So CI/CD test, there we go, and we should be able to just get onto the machine, no problem, no password. So the no password bit is important because in your CI/CD pipeline, you're not going to be able to, pass the password prompt. So this is how you want to do it, right? Keep this account low privilege, just give it permissions to put the files onto somewhere, and then you're good. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how the rsync command is going to work. Okay, let's go ahead and exit from here. We're gonna ls the directory, so we got a bunch of stuff. Let's go ahead and make a directory. We're gonna call it app. So in here we're gonna have our app, and then we're gonna touch our app appropriately only, and we're gonna touch something like a start app file. So imagine that, and make sure you put the dot at the beginning. So because it's a local directory, if you just say slash, it's going to be starting at the root. So if you do something like this, if you do this, it's your current directory, which is the same as this. Okay, so touch app start file, so that's going to be in our app. All right, so if we ls, just doing the same mistake again, okay, so there we go. So we can do something like 2 and 3, so we got a couple of files in there, right? So it's a real application now. We got HTML pages, we can put nested stuff in there. Let's go ahead and push that up into the server. Okay, so we go with the rsync command, and then we want to specify not but rather SSH, where we supply our key, which in our case is going to be in the same directory. I can't even remember what I called it anymore. So ls, let's bring this command back. I was like half typing it. Let's put this in here, -acicd. So that's where it is. Then we want to specify some flags. I won't be able to tell you off by heart what they mean, like AVRZ, I think ours recursive, Z is zipping, AVI, V verbose, I can't remember, but I just remember that that's just what you want from building like a couple of pipelines. We then say what we want to push. So in our case, we want to go ahead and push our amazing app, and we want to push everything in there. The last thing is the CI/CD_test, and same as connecting to our application. Just go ahead, put the IP address here, and on the end, where do we want to put it? So in our case, let's just go ahead and put it in our home directory, since we didn't give it any permissions to any other folders. Okay, so in our case, it's going to be CI/CD test and dash, let's say deployed app. I don't know if it'll let us create it, but we'll see. Right, let's go ahead and run this. Cool. If we go back to another terminal, hopefully I haven't timed out. I have. Let's go ahead and try to reconnect here. So this guy right here. Okay, there it is. So deployed app is there, and there are our files. Okay, so that's a quick rundown of our sync. That is basically how we're going to get our files onto the application once we are in the CI/CD pipeline. If you remember, the CI/CD pipeline is a machine just like Linux. So if you can do it from your local machine, you can do it from the Linux machine and the build agent on like GitHub Actions on Azure. Maybe you can do it from one cloud machine onto another cloud machine, etc. Right? All Linux machines, they're essentially the same. So it doesn't matter where they are. You can do the same things with them regardless. Okay, there might be like different permissions and whatnot, but generally, if you can do it locally, you can do it anywhere else. Okay, so hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section. You can reach out to me on Discord server. I also stream on Wednesdays and Sundays on Twitch. Go ahead and follow the link in the description. I start streaming at 6 o'clock London time. And as always, hope to see you in the next episode.